Hey guys, it's Haley and welcome to another bookish video. Today I'm going to be getting into my...
Hello? I was literally about to say November wrap up. What is actually happening in my brain?
I'm going to be getting into my May wrap up. I don't know what's going on, but I read 12 books in the month of May, and I'm gonna tell you guys all about them in this video. The good, the average, the great, the ugly, the bad, the horrid, the one that put me in a slump, the one that revived my reading and got me out of said slump. May was kind of a chaotic month, and I'm going to tell you all about my reading and give you a dozen book reviews so maybe you can read some good books and avoid some bad ones. And I did want to mention, in case you missed it in my June TBR video, I did launch new merch. All of the old merch is gone. I announced on Instagram a few weeks ago that all of the old designs, they're gone. They're literally in the Disney vault. Like, they're not coming out. They're done. They're gone. They're kaput. They're replaced with my new Coquette book club merch and some just like general channel merch. One of those designs is also Pride themed for Pride Month in June. Happy Pride to you and to me and to all the gay and trans people in the world. So you can go down below and shop the merch if you're interested. But yeah, I do a lot of updating about merch, Patreon benefits, yada yada da, all the little like updatey things on Instagram. So a lot of times I forget that like YouTube is my biggest platform and I should probably mention that stuff over here. If you want the kind of like niche updates like that, go follow me on Instagram. But yeah, now let's go ahead and get into the wrap up, starting with my May reading stats. As I said, I read 12 books in May, which is a lot lower than the amount of books that I usually read, but whatever. I still read 3,482 pages. I read in very narrow mood ranges though. I was pretty much only in the mood for a fast-paced thriller in the month of May, so I only have a few moods on my breakdown here: tense, mysterious, emotional, dark, and sad. Doesn't that sound like my reading taste? Just summed up right there. Half of the books I read were fast-paced and the other half were medium-paced. I read 4 books under 300 pages, and then all the rest of the 8 books were between 300 and 500 pages. I read all fiction this month. As I said, I was super into thrillers, which you can also see on my genre breakdown. Thrillers and mysteries are at the top, and everything else is teeny tiny little baby little, because I really just wanted to read thrillers, y'all. And my average rating across all 12 reviews that I gave for the books this month was only a 3.71. I feel like that's pretty average. Like, it's not abysmal, but it's also not great. I did have 1 2-star book. I had 2 3 stars, 3 3.5 stars, 3 4 stars, 2 4.5 stars, and 1 5-star read. Very different from last month and the month before, which I had 5 5-star reads, I believe, in both of those months. So you can understand why I was a little slumpy. I read a lot of thrillers, but a lot of average ones. And then this is the breakdown of how I read those pages throughout the month. You can see the few weekends that I was just like not having it, but my reading did pick up toward the end of the month. I will talk about the books that got me out of my slump. Before I get into the books that I actually read, rated, reviewed, I do want to mention the book that put me in my slump, which I ended up DNFing the first week of the month of May, and that is The 22 Murders of Madison May by Max Berry. I got 100 pages into this, and then I just didn't understand where it was going, and it lost a ton of momentum in the plot. So every time I thought about picking it up, I was just dreading it. It's literally been sitting on my desk for a month now because I was thinking I was going to return to it, but I'm just not motivated to. This is not a forever DNF. I still have my bookmark in. Hopefully I will return to it in the next couple months, but I'm scared too right now because she made me slumpy. And now getting into the books that I actually did read in the month of May. As always, we're gonna start out with my least favorite book of the month and work our way up to my most favorite book. My least favorite book that I read this month was The Lies He Told by Valerie Kyo. Gave this 2 stars, and honestly, that was being really generous, I thought. In this book, we're following 3 women who are simultaneously in a relationship with the same man, but obviously they don't know about each other. They're all being played by this man. When he goes missing, we are trying to figure out which one killed him or if they all banded together and did it. And along the course of the book, we are watching them find out about each other and put all the pieces together as to how they were being played. I thought it was gonna be like very feminine rage, like revenge with a dash of rich people drama, because a lot of these women are super wealthy and this man was taking advantage of them. But it didn't end up being that. I didn't like the writing style at all. It was so boring. It was so repetitive, and it just kind of dragged a lot of the story. It wasn't super interesting rich people drama. It was very like bland and blah, and I think the writing style definitely contributed to that feeling. It wasn't the like juicy, salacious stuff that I usually like. And I thought that this book was gonna get me out of my like kind of slumpy feeling that I was feeling from my DNF, but it actually made it 10 times worse. So I had to find something else to get me out of it later on in the month. I think maybe there's an audience for this thriller out here, like in the world somewhere. I don't think it's absolutely horrible and abysmal, but it was definitely a 2-star for me. Next up, we have my 2 3-star books that I read in the month of May. First up, I want to talk about The New Couple in 5B by Lisa Unger. I read this one in my new release thriller vlog that I posted this past month. If you missed that vlog, I will link it up above and down below. I go super in depth and you can see my entire reading experience of 4 of the new release thrillers that I read this past month. And The New Couple in 5B was one of them. I gave it 3 stars because I thought it was just above average. I was actually super into the plot for the first half, but around the 50% mark, things just fell apart. I think there were way too many subplots and it was trying to go in way too many different directions. It should have narrowed down and really made the few that were focused on slay. Then I think I would have really liked this. It has the vibes of Lock Every Door by Riley Sager, so if you like that book, you might actually enjoy this one. I really liked the vibes of it because it is taking place in this haunted, maybe, but definitely sinister and mysterious apartment building in New York City where all these like rich elite people live. And our main character's husband was actually left an apartment there in his inheritance from his uncle who just passed away. So our main character is a writer and she does true crime. So she wants to write her next book about what it's like to live in this very famous historical building, or should I say infamous building, because so many crimes, murders, suicides, suspected hauntings have taken place in this building. So she moves in there and she starts to have these weird occurrences, which are great for her book, but not so great for her life, as she starts to untangle the secrets, lies, and mysteries around the building. I loved the like creepy, mysterious rich people vibes. I also think if you like the New York setting, you will love this book. I also liked our main character, but the pacing and the plot just started to drag, like I said, around the 50% mark, and all those subplots going a million different directions never really recovered. I also didn't love the ending. You can hear all the reasons why in depth in my vlog, but yeah, I think I'll just leave it at that. It was a 3-star. It was fine. And the other 3-star book that I read in the month of May was The Vegetarian by Han Kang. And I actually read this one for Elizabeth from Reading Riley's Midnight Society book club. And I was so disappointed that I couldn't be a part of her live show. I was supposed to co-host with her and Kel Sweetie to talk about The Vegetarian, but unfortunately I had something last minute come up on the night that the live show was hosted, so I had to miss out. But I did read this book and I do have a lot of thoughts on it. So I will tell y'all now. I felt like I was really gonna like this book just based on the description. It's commentary on misogyny and like basically the plight of being a wife through this metaphor of vegetarianism. And we're following a wife who decides to go vegetarian and kind of like all the reactions from her family. This is a translated work and the chapters are really, really long, which I've read some other things like Confessions kind of has that structure, but I love Confessions by Kane Minato. It just has like a better pacing. The Vegetarian had those same like super long chapters, but not as masterful pacing. And additionally, every single part of this book was from a different perspective of a new person in this woman's life. And the whole book, I was so frustrated that we were not hearing from the woman herself. It was such a slog of a reading experience to read mostly from misogynistic male perspectives. It's like, I'm a woman, I already know how it is to be viewed from that perspective. I wanted to really be seen by and understand our main character who was going through this rejection from basically everyone in her family, her husband, her sister, her parents, everyone. I also did not really feel the horror of this book. I don't know if it's necessarily pitched as horror. Maybe it's more like literary. I would definitely call it more literary because the horrifying things about it were really just the commentary, and I expected there to be more like blood, guts, things popping off. And there definitely were some violent scenes, but they were more like sexually explicit violence through the lens of a man who was getting off on it. I don't know. I feel like this book had a lot of interesting and valid things to say. Like there were definitely times that the commentary kind of like hit me and knocked me back that I was like, wow, that is really meaningful and that is really great. I just wish that the messages could have been delivered in a better fashion with a better pace, different perspectives, and a little bit more interest, because honestly I just felt myself totally disconnecting and losing interest following the perspectives that we were following. This could totally be a issue that's unique to me because I mean, I think we all know I don't like reading books from the perspective of men most of the time. So this could be a total me thing, but I just thought there are other books that do the feminist commentary in horror a little bit better. Next up, we have my 3.5 out of 5 star rated books. Starting out with a YA queer horror book, and that is Beholder by Ryan LaSala. And this book was such an interesting read. I loved The Honeys by Ryan LaSala. I read that last summer, so I was super excited to read this one this summer. In this book, we're following a gay main character, which we love to see, especially for Pride Month. Yay! I mean, I didn't read this during Pride Month because I read it in May, but happy Pride Month now. And he is at this party when something goes down. I'm not going to give away what it is, but he is like the sole survivor of this event. And he starts wondering, is there something a little bit special about him? Does he possess some family history, some lore, some abilities that allow him to escape certain death? And as he kind of digs into the mystery of how he survived, more and more and more and more come to light. He's digging into his family history, his trauma, his heritage. There's a lot about like Greek philosophy, Greek heritage, Greek like belief systems in here, and I thought that was super interesting. This is also one that takes place in New York, and I absolutely loved the setting. I also loved the characters, especially our main character. I just felt like he was really sympathetic and relatable, easy to get on board with. The speculative elements were really fun, really interesting, and really different. I think Ryan LaSala writes such unique horror, especially for a YA audience. I absolutely love it. If I could tell that a kid would really enjoy Eric LaRocca, but they're a child and maybe shouldn't be reading Eric LaRocca, I would give that child Ryan LaSala books. I feel like they're like along the same vein in a way. But sometimes the weirdness and the lack of information, the ambiguity of the story, which is kind of signature to Eric LaRocca and Ryan LaSala, something they definitely have in common, and something that I really enjoy about their horror books. But sometimes in this one in particular, it was just taken a little too far. I wish that I had some more context. I wish that I actually did have maybe a couple info dumpy chapters to give me some kind of context, some kind of like footing in the story, because that really took me out of it, and I felt like I spent a lot of time being confused and kind of wondering what was going on rather than being assured and feeling solid, like I could actually give into the amazing writing style, the great characters, and the horrifying plot. But I felt like it was just a little bit disconnected because of those ambiguous choices with the plotting. Also, I finally started to grasp what was happening at the end, and then it kind of abruptly cut off. So I wish we had a little bit of a more drawn out ending as well. Those are the reasons why I didn't end up rating this one 4 stars. If you don't know my rating system, 4 stars is kind of like I widely recommend this book to everyone. I think because of the information and pacing issues, not everyone is gonna enjoy this one. I still got a lot out of it. I think if you like trippy speculative horror, you will too. But yeah, I had to give it a 3.5 because of that. Next up, we have Under Her Care by Lucinda Berry. I'm trying to get through all of Lucinda Berry's backlist so I can do a full recap video for you guys on every single thriller she's ever written, telling you guys which ones are the best, comparing them, contrasting them, all that jazz. This book is about a beauty queen whose autistic son is like on trial, or I guess he's not on trial yet, but he's like the main suspect that they want to bring to trial for this murder that was committed of a very wealthy, prominent figure in their town, which this takes place in Tuscaloosa, Alabama, which I didn't know anything about the lore of Tuscaloosa, however you say it. But apparently it's like very southern small town, even though it's a larger city in Alabama. And I definitely got the feel of the town, just like the vibes right off the bat reading this. We are following a few perspectives in this book. We're following the mother, the child who is suspected of murder, and also the main perspective that we're following is this ASD, autism spectrum disorder expert named Casey, who is kind of making it her mission to get this poor boy out of the sights of the police. And as she's doing that and like interviewing the child and looking into the case, she uncovers a whole lot of stuff that she had no idea was going to be going on in this case. It is so informative and so well written from a mental health perspective about autism spectrum disorder. I really appreciated that as a mental health professional, and I just love the way that Lucinda Berry crafts thrillers around this beautiful, meaningful, empathetic mental health representation. I think she's the best author at doing this seamlessly. You can tell that she has the mental health knowledge and chops to really include these things with meaningful purpose rather than just as a plot ploy. I really like the way that this plot unfolded as well, besides just the information and the characters, which I always like with Lucinda Berry. I actually did like the plot as well. I was surprised by a couple things, especially the last couple chapters, but there was this abrupt cutoff. I feel like I really could have benefited from an extra 30 or so pages. The book was only 270 pages. I feel like if it was 300, I could have given this a 4-star. It could have been a little bit more fleshed out, but the abrupt cutoff and the kind of loose strings that were left untied kind of left me a little bit unsettled. I didn't love that, so I knocked it from a 4 to a 3.5. And the last 3.5-star thriller I want to tell y'all about is She's Not Sorry by Mary Kubica. This was another one that I put in my new release thriller vlog this month, and I actually really liked it for the majority of the book. It kind of keeps you on your toes because we have no idea who we're following. So we get this banger of a first chapter of this woman who's called and told that her daughter was taken, and then it just cuts off and we pick up in this other storyline with this nurse who is going to work and dealing with a multitude of issues in her life, from reconnection with an ex-friend who she thinks might be in an abusive relationship, to a serial killer stalking her neighborhood, to issues with her own daughter and all of this stuff. And we're just trying to navigate all of these subplots, put the pieces together, and try to figure out who in the hell is about to get kidnapped and how is that going to impact the rest of the story. I thought it was really fast-paced and easy to read, just like a very approachable, easy to binge thriller. I did read this one in only like a day or so, but again, the ending was really abrupt and really underwhelming. So although I enjoyed my reading experience, I just felt like the ending could have been a little bit more. The pieces, all those subplots could have been a little bit better connected. It was just missing something to adhere all the pieces together. Similar to The New Couple in 5B, but I did think this one was better because the pacing and just the writing style was a little bit easier to get into. Next up, let's talk about my 4-star books, starting with I Have No Secrets by Penny Jolson. This is a YA thriller, and we are following a 16-year-old girl with cerebral palsy. I've never followed a character in any book with cerebral palsy before, and the representation in here is so great. The author really did her research, and she talks a lot about it in the author's note and discussion in the back of the book, which I really appreciated. But what happens with this girl is basically because she cannot speak, a murderer confesses his crimes to her, thinking that he's just gonna torment this physically disabled girl by like having her locked in her mind with his secrets, unable to tell anyone. But the tide starts to turn when our main character gets access to a technology that is this new medical advancement that allows her to be able to communicate. And she is gonna expose this man, but not if he kills her off first. And she's also trying to prevent him from striking again before she gets the chance to utilize this technology to expose him. It is so fast-paced and so suspenseful. Our main character is so interesting, and I had so much empathy for her. I felt so connected to her the entire time. I felt her frustration just being like locked in her brain and unable to access this piece of agency that should be so essential for every single person, but her illness unfortunately robbed her of that. Seeing the family dynamic in the house and the dynamic with the killer was so interesting. And this was a fairly short book. Again, I finished it in a little over a day. It was really, really helpful for getting me out of my slump and for just being like a really interesting and unique read. Y'all know I love a unique thriller that's not just like, oh no, woman gone missing, who took her, what's gonna happen? So this was giving me all of the uniqueness that I needed, and I really liked it. It's not a new favorite because the end really wasn't that shocking to me. Obviously there's no like massive killer reveal because we know who killed the entire time. He literally did his confession. So it was a little lackluster, but it was very satisfying to have this man get exposed. Basically the whole plot is like suspense and tension driving up to that point. I haven't heard many people talk about this one, so if you're interested in something a little bit unique, a little bit underrated, this is your girl. Next up, we have Listen for the Lie by Amy Tintera. This is pure Southern rich girly drama. Little suburban summery girls that are best friends, and they have these ideal lives, and they're just gorgeous and perfect until one day at their friend's wedding, one of them allegedly killed the other and woke up covered in her best friend's blood. She claims that she has complete amnesia of the entire event. She doesn't remember killing her best friend, and there's no evidence to prove it, but everyone in the town is like, girl, you woke up next to your dead best friend covered in blood. Like, what are you thinking? Of course you did it. So everyone has basically condemned her and convicted her in their minds in the town. But now, a few years later, I don't know exactly how many years later, yeah, it doesn't say. It just says it's been years since that horrible night. Our suspected queen has to move back to her hometown for a little bit. And it just so happens that a podcaster, true crime podcaster, is in town at the same time as her to try to prove what actually happened to her best friend on the night that she was murdered. And also hopefully recover our main character's memories to see if anything comes of that. I usually hate a basic murder mystery podcast thriller. They just don't feel, like I was talking about earlier, like unique or fun and interesting at all. But somehow this one just like kept my attention. I loved the juicy, scandalous drama. I love the like overlapping character dynamics of like everybody has these little secret relationships in this small town and nobody wants to talk about it, but then once it gets talked about, it's like you've blown the case wide open and you see everything in a new light. That moment happened quite a few times throughout this book. Really kept me interested, kept me reading, kept me hooked, and I was in it all the way through till the end. It's not a new favorite. I didn't give it 5 stars, but it's a solid 4-star, really enjoyable thriller. And the last 4-star book I want to talk about is also a new release thriller, and that is Daughter of Mine by Megan Miranda. For me, the past few years, the Megan Miranda releases have been flopping a little bit. I'm sorry, Megan. I'm really sorry. But not this one. Daughter of Mine did not disappoint. The plot sounds like really like low stakes, like nothing. Honestly, sounded kind of boring. I wasn't sure what to expect going in, but I absolutely loved what I got. We are following this girl whose mother disappeared years and years ago, and her father recently passed away. So she is back in town for his funeral and also to see what he left her in inheritance when they have this like car pulled up from the lake in the center of their town. It's a very, very small town thriller, and like this whole town is around this lake. So it's a big deal when they pull this car out. It's like no crime happens in this little small town. Everybody has eyes on the lake. How did this car get there? And then more cars start coming up, and we're wondering what is going on here in this town and how is it connected to our main character. This reads like a Karen Slaughter book. Okay, the writing style in this book is absolutely phenomenal. Megan Miranda just nails atmosphere. It's like creepy, it's mysterious. There's this like driving force of the weather patterns the entire course of the plot. It is so well done. The way that the small town and all the dynamics are written is just so mysterious, tense. I loved our main character and kind of viewing her through the lens of her family dynamic. There's a lot of generational trauma rep of just like things that happened with her mother before she disappeared, and then her relationship with her father and also with her brothers. The sibling dynamics were super interesting to me. This was a very quiet, small town thriller that I think a lot of people might overlook, especially because of Megan Miranda's track record the last few years. I don't think those books have gotten the best reviews. I don't think it's an unpopular opinion that I didn't like them, but please don't overlook this one. It was so good. The twists really shocked me. I loved all the reveals. I loved how everything wrapped up. Again, this isn't like a new favorite of all time kind of thriller, but I definitely widely recommend it, especially if you like the Grant County series by Karen Slaughter. This literally read exactly like that. So super solid and super happy for her. She's back. Go Megan. Next up, let me tell y'all about my couple 4.5-star rated books this month. First up, we have Gray After Dark by Noelle West Ely. This is another one of my little KU thrillers that I've been eating up lately. The first 50 pages honestly are the reason that this got a 4.5 instead of a 5-star, because the first 50 pages I was like, honestly, what the hell is going on here? We have this woman who was trying to go to the Olympics but she got injured and she's like grappling with that. So she goes to work at this like camp. I don't know. She's like in this camp trying to like get a job and like reinvent her life. And at the same time, she's also like training to get back into the Olympics to like overcome her injury. There's just like all of this information about our main character and the Olympics that I just like didn't really care about, to be totally honest. But once we got past those 50 pages, the story was so interesting and so well done. Because as she's training and like running through the woods at this camp on her little like summer job, she gets snatched. Okay, she gets snatched not just by any random like creepy man in the forest. No, she gets snatched by an inbred family. Okay, it's giving Brother by Anya Alborn, one of my favorite books of all time. The Strangers. It's giving Texas Chainsaw Massacre. It's giving these crazy men snatched her, and now she's living in this place where they're trying to completely brainwash her, like, hi wife, you're my little wife, you're my little wifey, and you're gonna be here and you're gonna be with me and you're gonna be with my dad and my brother and all my cousins, and you're just gonna be here forever, honey, because you're my wife. And don't you dare say your real name, and don't you dare talk about the Olympics, because that isn't real. That's not real at all. You're here, honey, and you're my wife, so stay on the farm. And she's just like, what in the F is actually happening to me? I was supposed to be an Olympian. And the backstory that we get in the first 50 pages, a lot of it revolves around her little love affair with her coach, her like Olympic coach. And when she goes missing, he's like, she would not just go missing in the woods. Like, she's very prepared. So he goes out there to try to find her and save her. And the whole time we are at the edge of our seat rooting for him to find her, and also seeing what is unfolding as she's kidnapped by these dudes. It is such effective horror and thriller, like back and forth. We're wanting her to escape, we're wanting her to be found by her mans, and the way that the ending plays out was so good. It just wrapped up really well. I felt like it was a satisfying ending, and it wasn't just like, she's escaped, hooray. You know what I mean? Like, there was a little bit of darkness to it. The pacing was kept up really well. Literally the only thing that holds this book back from being one of my new favorite thrillers is the first 50 pages of weird info dumping about the Olympics that I literally didn't care about. Everything else, great. My other 4.5 rated thriller this month was Unmissing by Minka Kent. This one was so great. Again, a really unique thriller. We are following this woman. She's super rich. Okay, she lives in this like beautiful glass mansion. She is her husband's second wife, and he owns all these restaurants, and he's just giving very like, I'm a businessman, don't talk to me, just like sit at home and take care of the kids, honey. So he's kind of unlikable, but our little wife, like, she has it made. So I'm like, slay. Well, his first wife was kidnapped, and she's just been presumed dead because she'd been gone for 10 years. And he's like, she disappeared. She either ran away and went off the grid and she fucking hates me, or she was kidnapped. So he just went along with his new wife or whatever, and the new wife's at home taking care of the kids while he's on his business, and she gets to knock at the door. Opens the door, bam, it's the first wife. And she's like, hey, yeah, I have been kidnapped for 10 years, but I didn't fucking die. I escaped, and now I'm here to claim my husband. And we're following the perspectives of both wives as they try to navigate this situation and see what's going on here. See how they can balance both being married to the same man, because the first one was presumed dead. And there's a lot of mystery around her kidnapping as well, because why, after 10 years of being missing, would she just roll up to her husband's mansion and be like, knock, knock, hello, instead of like, I don't know, crying and collapsing on the door of a police station? I don't know. This woman is very shady, and she has a lot going on with her. I really like this one. It didn't give me the 5-star feeling, but it was super unique. I love the character dynamics and the like uncomfortable feeling of it. Unputdownable, really easy to read. I was thinking about it when I wasn't reading it. I was anticipating figuring out what happened because it was just such a weird, like morally gray scenario. I really loved it. It just like didn't give me that 5-star feeling. I don't know, but the end totally popped off and it was so interesting. So still highly recommend it. And the singular 5-star book that I read in the month of May got me out of my slump, got me back into reading thrillers after so many days. I think it was like 4 or 5 days that I hadn't read anything, and I was like, please God, help me. I put all of my faith in Christina Henry with Good Girls Don't Die. It paid off because, oh my God. I think this is branded as a horror book, but it definitely reads like a thriller. This book is so unique. Okay, let me just tell you about it because I don't feel like the description on the back gives a very good description at all. Like, it's just not accurate. It doesn't tell you the cool thing about this book. We are basically following in 3 parts, like 3 60, 70 page chunks, 3 different storylines. And we know that they somehow all go together, but we don't know how until part 4, when all the plots come together and all the mysteries are solved and all the reveals are revealed and all the twists are twisted. The first part that we're reading about, we're following this woman, and she's in this very like Truman Show-esque situation where she wakes up and she's like, this is not my life. Like, why am I in this perfect cookie cutter suburban town as someone's wife and someone's mom? Like, I'm not this girl. I want to be living my little quirky single artist dream, and I definitely don't want a kid, and I definitely don't want to be wearing the clothes that are in my closet or watching the shows that are on my TV or drinking the wine that's in my fridge. Like, what is going on? So she's the first person that we're like, okay, something strange is happening here. Then in part 2, we're following a completely different woman who is caught up in a basically like Friday the 13th-esque slasher, where she's going on vacation to a cabin in the woods with all her college besties, and they start getting picked off one by one by a masked killer. And in the third part, we are following another woman who is caught in this like dystopian situation, like Hunger Games, Maze Runner-esque world where all of these women are treated as second-class citizens and forced to go through trials and basically compete like the Hunger Games to save their loved ones who've been kidnapped by this like evil, corrupt government to like keep these women in line. And then in part 4, all 3 women's stories intersect. Even though they're in like wildly different worlds, they all have like butterfly effects on each other. I love the way everything came together. I love the discussions about horror literature that were imbued throughout the book. There's commentary about thrillers in this very thrilling kind of book. I just loved it. I thought it was genius. I loved the characterization. I loved the commentary, the messaging. I loved the pacing of the book. I loved that each part totally felt like a different story. That was something that really helped me get out of my slump, is like I would pick up this fast-paced part and be like, oh my God, I'm so into it. And then it would cut off right at the time I was feeling like, oh no, I could start to get slumpy or like want to put this down. Boom, I got something new. It just like revived my reading. And I love the way everything came together so much. The commentary of it all. It was darkly funny and ironic and just like really well written. I love Christina Henry. This is not the first book of hers that I've given 5 stars, so I cannot wait to read more from her. I feel like a Christina Henry taste test needs to come soon. Even though I've already read a few of her books, there are a few that I haven't, and so I'd love to do a dedicated reading vlog on her books. Let me know if you guys would like to see that, and if you are looking for a new Hailey rec to pick up, like, this is the one. This is the 5-star read of the moment. And those are all the books that I had to tell you about today in my May wrap up. I hope you guys enjoyed watching this video and you got a couple good recommendations. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to go down below and shop the merch. It should be linked like in the little bar down below on YouTube itself, just to make it easy for you. You can also like this video if you liked it while you're down there. It really helps with reach. And subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, because half of y'all that watch are not subscribed. And of course, don't forget to go to therapy and read a book this week. I will see you guys in my next video.